All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about how much to charge for doors. So in this video, we're going to go over the types of doors, the types of work that we're going to do to the doors, and the way that we figure out how much we're going to charge for those doors. And this is going to include interior, exterior, and garage. It's also going to include everything from replacing the entire door all the way down through just replacing some hardware, all the way down to just making some minor adjustments so that they open and close correctly as well. Now, I do have a few caveats and disclaimers to give you, and the first and foremost one is going to be this. This pricing is my pricing for my business with my clients and with my business model. My pricing should not be your pricing. You should be using this video and my pricing simply to help you figure out where to get your pricing. And my pricing in this video and in all videos, unless I stipulate otherwise, is always labor only. I am never talking about materials unless I tell you that it includes materials. We're only talking about what we're charging for the labor on these jobs. My prices, by the way, are always dynamic. They're always adjusting. In 3 months, I may be looking at some of them saying, I think that was a little too high, and bumping it down, or vice versa. And I'm also in the middle of a process of getting my business ready to accommodate hourly employees. So that's going to change some of my pricing as well, because these employees are going to have different levels of skill, and I'm going to be looking for different results for these jobs. Now, if you download my pricing spreadsheet, which is what I'm going to be doing all these numbers off of today, if you download that, and by the way, you can go to the description of this video or any of my videos and download any of my documents for free. It's all the way down at the bottom of the description. There's a link to click, and that will guide you towards getting my free documents. If you download my jobs list with pricing, please keep in mind that when you see a plus sign, so if I say trip fee plus or $150 plus, that plus sign is simply my way of saying to you, hey, this job tends to go over that amount pretty frequently. This is not always going to be necessarily right around our nice little average. And when you hear me talking about hourly, anytime I say hourly, unless I've stipulated otherwise, I'm talking about our own internal hourly rates. I'm talking about averages that we're looking for over the days and weeks and months. I am not talking about billing your clients an hourly rate for your services. That is not something that I advocate on this channel. Now, as far as my rates, they are going up in 2025. In fact, I've already started bumping them up so that now my trip fee, which you can think of as a trip minimum, is $150 instead of $125, and the hourly rate that I'm looking for, again, not what I'm charging my clients, but my own internal numbers, the hourly rate I would like to see as a minimum for my time on the job is about $120. And $120 works out real nice because if you want to do some math to figure out what you should be charging for stuff, $120 an hour is $2 a minute. So you can now visualize your jobs and say, yeah, that's about a 15-minute job, so 15 times 2 is 30, which means I should be charging $30 for it as an add-on. And speaking of add-ons, let's turn the page real quick and let's go over real fast the difference between a one-off job and a line item job. When I give you this pricing, you're going to see two columns on the spreadsheet, and one of those columns is a one-off column and the other column is a line item column. One-off column is the price that I'm going to charge for that job if I'm simply going to that property to perform that one task, and then I'm going to invoice for that one task. A line item price is very different. For the line item pricing, what that's going to be is for bigger jobs where I'm charging a standalone trip fee, meaning a trip fee that covers no labor whatsoever, a standalone trip fee, and that trip fee is going to cover admin work, shopping, cleanup, waste disposal, all of that stuff. So a line item price is where I'm charging a standalone trip fee, and then I'm simply charging a smaller price per item to add that item to the job. So a one-off means I'm charging the full price to drive to the property and do the job, all one package price. A line item price means I'm already at the property, I've already charged my trip fee to get there, to do the admin work, to do the shopping, and now I'm just simply going to have line item prices for each individual item that I want to add to that list. So let's dive into these doors and talk about what types of doors we're going to be working on first of all. So going to closet doors, which we do a whole lot of, we're going to have bypass doors and bifold doors. Bypass doors are the ones that hang from a rail up top and they slide past each other like this. They don't touch, they don't hinge, they just slide past each other. Bifold doors also work on a closet, and each door is going to be two individual panels that are hinged in the center of each other, so they kind of accordion to the side. Each one of them is going to fold up and accordion to either side. Those are bifold doors. Another type of door that I'm just going to call standard, these are your standard entry and your standard interior doors. Just one big slab, 3 hinges on the side, doorknob and or deadbolt on the other. Those are my standard doors. And on the more rare side, we do sometimes have pocket doors. Those are the ones that slide in and out of the wall, so they go inside the wall and outside the wall to cover the doorway. We're also going to have barn doors. I don't see very many of them, although they are very simple. And every now and then you're going to see an accordion door, which is kind of like the bifold doors, except just multiple bifolds all the way up, and they accordion all together on one side. Another type of door we're going to go over is going to be shower doors, and these can be bypass, where they hang from the rail on the wheels, or they can be the hinged shower doors. We've also got slider doors, and these can be your sliding glass doors for your patio or your sliding screen door for the patio. And speaking of screen doors, we've also got, of course, regular hinged screen doors that just open and close with a hinge on the side. And then similar to the screen doors, we're also going to have security doors. And now a security door can be screened, but the difference between a screen door and a security door is the screen door is meant to keep out bugs and critters. The security door is actually there for security, so it's going to have a much more hardcore mounting system, and it may be screen and keep out critters, but its purpose really is to be secure. And then finally, of course, we're going to have garage doors. And then I'm also throwing in French doors right at the end here, simply because even though they are basically standard doors just doubled up to each other, French doors do tend to have a few extra problems that we might need to address right at the end here. So starting right up at the top of the list, we'll start with the bypass doors. Usually you're going to find these on closets and pantries. In your bypass doors, there's a few things that you're going to be doing to these. Number one is replacing the headrail above. These all ride on a rail from above. Number two is going to be replacing the wheels on the door that ride on the headrail. Number three is going to be replacing the door itself. And when we replace the door, we're always going to do all the rest of the hardware with the door. We're going to do it as one full package unit. And then finally, down at the floor, you have a guide on the floor, and sometimes we'll be replacing those guides. So if we're doing a full replacement, meaning the guide on the floor, the doors themselves, the headrail above, the wheels, everything, the whole kit and caboodle, not including paint. If we're doing a full replacement as a one-off job, meaning it's the only job at that property that we're going there to do, my price for that currently is $240. But for all of the rest of the jobs we might do to that door, including just replacing the headrail, just replacing the wheels, installing a handle, replacing the floor guide, or just reinstalling the doors and adjusting them, for any of those other jobs that we're going to do to the bypass doors, I'm just going to be at a trip fee. All of those jobs are really quick, so it's just going to be a trip fee, which for me is $150, and for you it's going to be whatever it is for your business. And then real quick for the line item pricing, if I'm replacing a headrail by itself, and I'm going to remind you all this one time and then I won't be reminding you again, the one-off pricing, that's the price for if I show up at the property to do only that one job. Line item pricing, which is what I'm about to give you for the doors, is how much I'm going to charge for labor only to add that job to an existing trip fee that's already been standalone and been covered by itself as its own trip fee. So if I'm already there and I'm simply adding the job and trying to account for my labor only, then this is what I'll be charging. I'll be charging for replacing the headrail, $50. Replacing all of the wheels on all of the doors, $40. Reinstalling or adjusting the doors with no replacements of anything necessary is going to be $35. Installing a floor guide is going to be $35, and installing a handle by itself is going to be $35. Now, a few extra tips I'm going to give you for these bypass doors, and tip number one is going to be that headrail up top. When that headrail gets dents in it, the door starts bumping around through those dents, and it'll eventually come off the rails. If you have a headrail that's dented, and the door is bumping around on that dented headrail, don't try to just fix that dent. That dent is now a weak spot, and that door is going to continue pushing that dent back in, and it's going to start jumping and hitting, and you're going to start getting a serration along the top. So if you have a problem with your headrail, just replace the headrail by default. Also, with these door replacements, including bypass and including all other types of doors and all work done to all doors, none of my pricing includes paint. So if we're installing new doors, my pricing is just simply to install the new doors, not to paint them. That's going to be extra. Also, when you're doing your floor guides down there, if you're in a house with a post-tension slab, you're not supposed to drill into those, so you're gonna have to find alternative methods to attach things to that floor. And then finally, also for that floor guide, don't glue it to vinyl. Whatever, just do whatever you need to do. Don't be trying to glue these floor guides down to the vinyl. It does not stick, it's gonna pop off, and then I'm gonna come behind you having to fix it. Moving on to bifold doors, very similar. We've got headrails at the top we can replace. We've got hardware on the door. It's going to be different hardware, but we've got a headrail on the top. We've got hardware on the door that we can replace, or we've got the doors themselves that we can replace, or we can just simply be putting them back into their slots and or adjusting them because they've fallen out or come loose over time. So, for one-off pricing, to replace only the headrail up top, keeping everything else original and just replacing the headrail up top, for me, that's going to be $185 for that one-off job where that's the only reason I went there was to fix those doors and replace that headrail. And if I'm replacing both of the bifold doors as a whole unit, if I'm replacing all of it, then that's going to be $275 as a one-off trip. And if I'm just installing knobs, any of those are just going to be my trip fee. However, those are going to be trip fee plus. And the reason those are trip fee plus is because these bifold doors are they're really a pain in the butt. Sometimes they're super easy to work on and the solution is just simple like that and you knock it out and you get out of there. And guys, sometimes these bifold doors are just a pain in the butt, which means the pricing is very unpredictable for these, which is why I have that plus on there. If yours tend to be a little bit harder than usual, use that plus and bump that price up. And that ties right in with my line items too, my line item pricing on here. If you've downloaded my spreadsheet, you're probably going to see them highlighted in yellow. Any line item pricing highlighted in yellow, or for that matter, any one-off pricing highlighted in yellow if I end up doing that. If it's highlighted in yellow, that means that this job is extremely variable, that it's on something that can be and often is a pain in the butt. But what I have down here for simply replacing the headrails as a set, as a line item, so adding it to an existing job, $120. Replacing the door hardware, so just any of the hinge hardware and stuff on these doors is going to be $60, but that's in yellow, could be a lot more, could be less. Replacing the doors as one whole set, as a line item on an existing job, $165, and that might be a little bit low even. Reinstalling doors that have fallen out and or adjusting them to get everything to fit correctly, that's going to be $60. And finally, installing knobs as a line item price is going to be $25. Now I'm going to give you all two big tips on these doors. Number one is you're going to need to know, preferably in advance, if these are standard bifold doors or if they're really, really old metal ones. The old metal ones are not the same to work on as the newer style ones that are wooden doors. So you want to know that in advance. The other thing you really want to know is if you're going to replace these doors, measure, measure, measure. Make sure you know how wide that opening is. More than half the time when I go to replace bifold doors, the opening is not a standard opening and it will not accommodate standard bifold doors, and I end up having to buy one size up on the bifold doors and then I have to trim them down, which means I have to take them apart, unhinge them from each other, and split the difference and cut like an 1/8 inch or a 1/4 inch or 3/8 of an inch off the edge of every single panel of each of the doors. So that gives you 4 total panels, which means 8 total edges. So 8 times that you're cutting off an 1/8 of an inch or a 1/4 inch or 3/8 of an inch. Very time consuming. You are not going to be profitable if you didn't measure them in advance. If you bought those doors and went out there and tried to install them and then figured out that you're going to have to cut everything down, and now because you had to cut it down, you're going to have to do some paint because now you're going to have exposed wood. It's going to be a mess. So measure your bifold doors and make sure that the opening is a standard opening. If it's not a standard opening, you're going to need to add a minimum of an hour to an hour and a half. So let's say $100 to $200 additional on this job just to cover the extra expense of all the extra work you're going to have to do to these doors to make them work. Next on the list is standard interior, kind of a bread and butter job. So the things you're going to be doing on these doors generally is you've got 3 hinges on the edge that you might need to replace and or fill the holes and then replace the hardware for because the screws get stripped out. You're also going to have your doorknob and you're going to have your strike plate over here on the frame. And typically when an interior door gets written up, it just isn't closing and latching correctly, so you've got to adjust everything. And one tip I'm going to give you is when you start working on any door, exterior or interior, if it's a standard door with hinges, before you touch anything else, check all the hinges to make sure that all the screws are in nice and tight, because half the time whatever's going on is just from loose hinges. And if you go trying to fix something with a knob alignment over here, before your hinges are taken care of, you're going to fix the knob alignment, then you're going to find the hinges, then you're going to tighten the hinges, now your knob's off and you got to do your knob again. So check the hinges first every single time. And for pricing on these standard interior doors, for me, for a full replacement of just the door by itself on a one-off job, $250. For a full replacement of the door, including the frame, so a pre-hung unit, $350. And for replacing the knob, replacing the strike plate, reinstalling the door, and or just adjusting things on the door so that it closes and latches properly, that's going to be a trip fee, which for me is $150, and for you is whatever your trip fee is. And then moving on to the line item pricing, so if we're already there on a separate trip fee and that trip is already covered and we're just adding the line item, then that's going to be $150 to just replace the door itself, or $250 to replace the door with the frame, also known as a pre-hung unit. And for replacing a doorknob and or a strike plate by itself as an add-on, or just making adjustments, all of those are $30 as line items. And as I've already said, that does not include paint. If they want paint, that is extra. Next on the list is pocket doors, and some of the things that we're going to do to those is number 1, replacing locks and or latches. Number 2, putting the door back into place, meaning it's fallen off the rails and we're able to get it back on the rails without taking a bunch of stuff apart. And that also includes just any adjustments and or getting it unstuck if it's stuck in the frame. Now we're also going to have door replacements, and there's 2 types of door replacements for pocket doors. There's what I call simple and complex. The simple ones can be replaced simply by removing some additional trim around the pocket door frame, and then you can get the entire door in and out without opening up the wall. Complex is where the frame is smaller than the door itself and you end up having to open up the wall in order to get the door in and out. And every now and then, but not often, sometimes you're just replacing the rail by itself. So guys, here's the thing you really need to know about pocket doors. Number 1, they're rare, unless I think you're in the Northeast. I think they're a little more common up there. But just about everywhere else, number 1, pocket doors are rare. Number 2, pocket doors are complicated. Of all the different types of doors we work on, they're going to throw more wrenches at you than just about anything else. And oftentimes, the big thing to know, oftentimes you're going to have to open up the entire wall to get in there and do any number of things. And it may not be the entire wall. You can sometimes get away with a small opening up near the top. But the point is, a lot of this door is installed inside the wall and it's not meant to be accessible to you without opening up the wall. So always, always, always know going into a pocket door job that it's not likely to be simple unless you're just replacing a lock or a latch on it. So my one-off pricing, if it's the only job I'm doing there, if I'm just replacing a lock, if I'm just replacing a latch, if I'm just unsticking the door or adjusting the door and I don't have to open any walls up, if that's the case, those are all going to be just a trip fee, so for me $150. But if I have to replace the rail or the door and open up that wall for any reason, I'm not even giving you any pricing on this. It's going to be variable, and what I'm going to tell you is just assume, if nothing else guys, if you don't know what you're doing already, just assume that this is going to be a full day or more than a full day and charge whatever it is you need to make at least for a full day's wages. Now, once you've done a few of these, it won't be a full day. You will learn some tips and tricks and you will get faster at them to where you can do fully replace actually, 2 of them in one day. That's going to be possible, including opening up the wall, including patching the wall and putting new texture on and new paint and everything. I've done 2 pocket doors in a day, but it requires a lot of experience. So expect, if you don't know what you're doing, expect 1 full day to work on just 1 pocket door. And then for the same jobs, but if there are additional line items on a job I'm already at, it's going to be $40 to replace a lock, $40 to replace a latch, or $40 to just get it unstuck and or adjusted. All right, and then we have barn and accordion doors, and I'm not going to say a lot about these, and the reason for that is I think I've worked on 2 or 3 accordion doors in the last 4 years. They're not common, so I don't need standardized pricing. And for barn doors, I've done 1. 1 barn door is all I've done in 4 years. They just aren't common enough, at least for me, to have standardized pricing. So all I'm really going to say on these is give a price in advance if you need to give a price in advance. Give a price that feels a little high to you, and then show up and do the job, and then discount that job appropriately afterwards. Moving on to shower doors, we got two basic types of shower doors, and that's going to be the bypass shower doors. So they're riding on a wheel, on a rail up at the top. You got your bypass doors that bypass each other, and then you've got your hinged shower doors. Most of the jobs you're going to do, if it's a bypass door, most of the time it's going to be either replacing or adjusting the wheels up at the top of the door, or it's going to be dealing with a handle or with the rubber bumpers at the bottom to give them a place to hit and stop on. And if it's the hinged type of shower door, typically with those, it's going to be the handle you're replacing, or it's going to be the magnet you're replacing that latches it in place when you shut it all the way, or it's just going to be like the water stripping, the weather stripping, waterproofing, the strips that go around the door to stop water from exiting the shower and getting onto the bathroom floor. Now, one thing I will tell you right off the bat about these shower doors is if they're made of glass, that is high liability. Feel free to just simply not take on those jobs if you don't feel that you know what you're doing. Also, it's difficult to have good inventory for them because they tend to come with different hardware for different brands, and you're not always going to be able to match things up correctly without making an additional trip to the hardware store or even ordering parts online. And one good solution for that is to get some pictures from your tenant before you ever go to the property to try to do the work, because oftentimes those pictures are going to tell you what you need and you're going to know if you have it, or at least you could stop at the hardware store on the way there and pick up the right one. So for pricing on the shower doors, the bypass ones, the glass shower doors that bypass each other, if I was going to install a brand new set onto a tub that didn't have one previously, assuming there was nothing weird going on, I'm going to be at a minimum of $600 labor to install them brand new as a one-off job. And for all other jobs that I might be doing to those doors, including replacing the wheels, adjusting the wheels, replacing the handle, or replacing the bumpers, all of those are going to fall under one trip fee. So for me, $150 will cover any of those other minor jobs. And then as a line item on a larger work order where it's just being added, I'm still going to be at $600 to install them brand new, and that is going to be a minimum. Lots of things could make that go up, but $600 minimum. And then for replacing the wheels or adjusting the wheels, that's going to be $100 minimum, and a lot of that is because of the additional liability that I'm taking on by working with something that is glass and that could possibly injure somebody someday. And then to replace the handle and or the bumpers, those are going to be $45 each as additional line items. Now for the hinged shower doors, if I'm going to replace or install new the entire thing, again, I'm going to be at $600. And that $600 is going to apply whether this is a one-off job or whether this is an additional line item on a larger job. Replacing the trim is going to be a trip fee. Replacing the handle is going to be a trip fee. Replacing the magnet is going to be a trip fee. And simply adjusting the door is going to be a trip fee. And moving on to the line item pricing, if these are just being added to a larger job, then replacing the trim is going to be $35, again, labor only. Replacing the handle is going to be $30. Replacing the magnet's going to be $35, and simply adjusting the door is going to be $45. Next, let's move on to standard exterior doors. So these are just your regular entry doors into your homes with the 3 hinges and a doorknob and a deadbolt. The jobs that we may or may not be doing to these doors are as follows. Number 1 is a full door replacement. Number 2 is going to be just the hinges. Number 3 is going to be doorknobs and or deadbolts. Number 4 is going to be weather stripping all the way around. Number 5 is going to be your bottom seal that we call the sweep. It's also got other names, but I call them all sweeps, so your bottom seal as well. And we also have a threshold down there and multiple different types of locks and latches that may or may not be on this door. And the one tip that I'm going to give you again, guys, every single time is check your hinges first before you start messing with locks and latches. But in addition, for front entry doors where you've got the weather stripping as well, if that weather stripping needs to be replaced, I want you to replace the weather stripping before you mess with the hinges and or locks and latches or anything else. And the reason for that is when you put new weather stripping in, it's going to push that door towards you a little bit harder. When you go to shut it, that new weather stripping is going to push back a little more. So get that on before you start adjusting anything else. And let's talk about our specific pricing for these. So the first price is going to be for a full door replacement. And this, for my company's policy, is always going to be a pre-hung. We're not ever going to be advertising that we're going to replace just the door itself without the frame. There's a lot of reasons for it, but suffice to say, my policy is to do the entire frame plus the door comes with a threshold on it. You know everything fits and you know everything works before you put it in. And for that job, that is going to be a minimum of $600 labor for me, and that is not going to include any repairs that I need to do after removing the trim and the frame. That's just going to be to remove the trim, remove the door with the frame, put a new pre-hung door with a frame and everything in there, and put the trim back. That's not going to include if we need to do any drywall repairs around the exterior or any paint or anything else. $600 just to replace the door, pre-hung only. And for a standard entry door to replace just the threshold and nothing more for me as a one-off job, that's going to be $185. However, everything else I might do to that door is going to fall under the trip fee. And I'm going to read the list to you of everything that falls under a trip fee. Replace doorknob and rekey, replace deadbolt and rekey, adjust or align to latch or lock is just going to be a trip fee, replacing the weather stripping, replacing the sweep and or the bottom seal, installing a chain lock, installing a slide latch, or installing an alarm. All of those, the labor falls under the trip fee. Now moving on to the other portion, which is going to be the line item pricing. Number one, I'm not going to replace the entire unit as a line item in addition to a job. That's always going to be a standalone estimate that I get approved first. But if I'm replacing a doorknob or a deadbolt and rekeying, by the way, I always use Quickset Smart Key Security deadbolts and knobs and levers. And the reason for that is because they can be rekeyed very easily by somebody just like me without any real experience. But if I'm replacing a doorknob or a deadbolt and rekeying, those are $25 each. And most of the time you're doing the whole house, which is going to be up to 6 or 8 doorknobs and deadbolts total that you're doing for $25 each, and then rekeying everything to match itself. If I'm just adjusting things and aligning things, that's going to be $50. The weather stripping replacement is $45, and the bottom seal replacement and or the sweep is $40. Replacing the threshold as a line item added to a bigger job, replacing the threshold is $135. Installing a chain lock is $40. Installing a slide latch is $60, and installing an alarm is $45. And again, those pricings are the line item pricings if I'm already at the job and just adding these line items. Next on the list is sliding glass doors. And with our sliding glass doors, the most common problems are going to be that the actual handle with a locking or latching mechanism is just simply broken, falling off, or doesn't latch or doesn't lock properly. Second most common problem is going to be that it's hard to open and close, and that's going to be the wheels down on the bottom that you're going to need to fix for that. But let's talk about the prices real quick. So if it's going to be a full replacement of the entire sliding glass door assembly, the whole frame, both panels, everything, full replacement. Number one, I'm at $1,000 for that, a minimum of $1,000. But number two, I don't want that job, and I'm probably going to say no. The only way I'm going to say yes is if it's for a property manager that I just really like so much that I feel like I owe them a favor. Otherwise, I'm going to just refer that out to a door specialist. I'm not going to touch that. However, number two is going to be if I need to replace the wheels, then I will need to remove an entire sliding glass door panel. Now, if everything goes smoothly and if the panel can be removed without disassembling any other parts of the door, I'm going to be at $175 minimum, but this is $175 plus. It could go way up from there, but $175 minimum to simply remove that glass door pane, turn it on its side, and get some new wheels installed. The rest of the jobs, which I'll read off as follows, are going to fall under the trip fee. So, replace handle, replace mortise latch, adjust the lock or the latch, adjust the wheels, install a security bar, or clean and lubricate the track. Those are all things we may need to do to these doors that I'm going to do just for the trip fee. And then going down the same list, if this is a larger job and I'm just adding these line items, then replacing the handle is $45, replacing a mortise latch is $55, adjusting the lock or the latch is going to be $30, adjusting the wheels is $35, replacing wheels on the job as an add-on is going to be $135, installing a security bar $45, and then cleaning and lubricating the track is going to be $50. Couple tips for you: do not lubricate the track with oil. You can use some silicone lubricant. You could maybe even use some graphite lubricant, but don't put an oil-based lubricant on these tracks. It's just going to attract more dust and dirt and mess them up in the long run. And then the other big tip is just for you to know, as I've already mentioned, to replace the wheels requires that you take the door out. To take the door out, sometimes can be done without disassembling anything, but sometimes taking the door out is going to require that you remove the other pane. The big fixed pane may have to be removed for you to get the door out to replace the wheels. Next is going to be screen doors. These can be sliding screen doors or hinged screen doors. For the sliding screen doors, I will give you a couple tips. Number one is if it needs to be rescreened, rescreen it in place, and that also applies to the hinged screen doors. If you can, don't remove them, just rescreen them in place. Number two, if your sliding screen door has really much of anything wrong with it at all, the new ones from Home Depot, the one size fits all, they're about $100. And the truth is, with these screen doors, guys, every time I've ever tried to work on the old ones, if I'm trying to just straighten them out a little bit, half the time I'm going to get a callback for that, and I don't want callbacks. So what I'm going to do is, if this screen door isn't in really good shape, if it needs anything more than just like a new handle or some new screen, I'm just going to put a brand new screen door in there because I don't like callbacks. And my pricing for everything you can do to a screen door, whether that be replacing the screen, replacing the handle, adjusting it, replacing the wheels, etc. All the jobs that I do to these doors are going to fit within a trip fee because none of them even take an hour. And for the sliding screen door, as line items added to a bigger job, replacing the door itself as a line item is $60. Replacing the wheels by themselves is $60. Replacing the handle or the latch is $60. Adjusting it and doing nothing more than just simply adjusting it is $30, and then rescreening it is $70. And then moving on to the hinged doors, basically it's all the same stuff we can do to these types of doors. All of them, again, are going to fall under a trip fee up to and including replacing the entire screen door, assuming there's nothing wrong, assuming everything is normal and it all fits. All of the things that I can do to those screen doors, including the hinged ones, including full replacement, will fall within a single trip fee. But if it's a line item on a bigger job, then replacing the door by itself is going to be $125. Replacing the pneumatic closer, $50. Replacing a spring and a chain, $45. Replacing the handle, $40. Rescreening, $60. And adjusting the lock or the latch is $30. Next is security doors. And security doors honestly suck a lot more than you might think they do, and they're gonna be a pain in your butt more than you might think they would be, mostly because of the weight, and then also partially because a lot of people don't install them correctly, and that bad installation combined with the weight is what allows these doors to just really become a pain in the butt, because they sag and they don't really sit where they're supposed to be sitting. But there aren't a lot of jobs that we're going to do to these. We're going to replace them or install them new. We're going to install new doorknobs and or deadbolts, or we're going to adjust the entire door to fit the house properly again, and or to get the latch and the lock to latch and lock correctly. So for installing a new door and or replacing an old door, the whole unit, the whole assembly, I'm going to be at $400 plus. The plus is because we don't know what we're attaching this to. We don't know how easy or hard it's going to be to get a good solid bite into something strong for installing these. So if it all goes smoothly, $400. If it doesn't go smoothly, more than $400. Replacing the knobs and the levers and the deadbolts and or just adjusting things, that's usually going to fall within the trip fee. And then doing these same jobs as brand new line items on an existing job, that's going to still be $400 to install new, $400 to replace, or it's going to be $60 to adjust the lock and or the latch, or it's going to be $30 each for the deadbolt and or doorknob. So if we're doing both the deadbolt and the doorknob, that'll be $60 total to replace both of those and get them rekeyed. And getting closer to the end, let's move on to the garage doors. So on a garage door, one of the common jobs that you may be asked to do is going to be to replace an entire panel of the garage door. It's not a job that I'll do. I refer that out to garage door specialists. After the panel, really common job is going to be replacing one of the wheels that goes into the rail on the inside. For replacing a wheel, that's going to be a trip fee, or if it's a line item, I'm going to charge $85 to add that to an existing job. Replacing the lock and or the latch on the door is going to also fall under the trip fee, but it's also going to be $85 if I add that to an existing job. Replacing the motor, I am not going to do. I've never done one yet. I'm sure I could, but it's a job I prefer to just farm out to the garage door specialist, so I don't have pricing for that. Cleaning and lubricating the track, that's going to easily fall under a trip fee. If I add that to an existing job, it'll be an additional $40. Resetting the emergency pull, that's a trip fee, or $10. Adjusting the IR sensors is a trip fee or $65. Replacing the bottom seal, and by the way, they do make extra thick bottom seals because a lot of times your cement on the bottom is not nice and level and you're going to have gaps at the ends, and when they ask you to replace that, you can purchase or order extra thick bottom seals. But to replace those bottom seals, that's going to be trip fee plus, because some of them do get a little complicated, or it's going to be a minimum of $125 as an additional line item. Then replacing the garage door trim. This is the weather stripping on the outside of the door. By the way, this weather stripping is always bad on just about every property I ever visit. It's a great thing to be on the lookout for so you can upsell your clients to get more money out of that job. But to replace that trim all the way around the outside, I actually have $225 written down here. I think I probably should be and will be at $250 instead, but let's go with $225 for now, or adding it as a line item on an existing job is going to be $200. Replacing or repairing the wall button, the one that's by the door where you enter the garage that you just pop to open up the garage door from inside the garage, replacing that button is going to be a trip fee or $70 as a standalone line item. A new clicker, so providing and programming the new clicker is going to fall under a trip fee or $45 each as additional line items. And programming the new keypad, I don't know because I've never done it before, but I'm sure if I had to, it would fall under a trip fee, and I feel like it's probably not more than a 20-30 minute job, so I don't see any reason I need to charge more than about $50 to add that as an additional line item. But to be clear, I haven't done one, so you may know better than me. I don't know. And then finally, painting the garage door. You will get requests just to repaint the garage door by itself. When I get those requests, my price for that is $350. Or if I'm already on the job and it's an additional line item to a larger job, $285. And for the French doors, there isn't as much extra to say. They are very much like standard interior or exterior doors. But one of the biggest differences is actually going to be in the middle where they meet. Sometimes that weather stripping is a little harder to get perfect. So if you've got picky clients who are looking for the tiniest little bit of light making its way through, you might have some trouble with those in the middle. And then also just getting them to lock and latch perfectly and to sort of stay solid and feel solid. That can be a little bit more difficult, but not much more difficult. But let's just go down my pricing for it real quick. So if we're going to replace a door, and I mean only one door, one of the two of the set that make the French, if we're going to replace that one, and we're going to order it from the manufacturer, we're not going to be mortising our own. It's going to be a matching French door from a manufacturer. The hinges are already going to meet. Everything is supposed to line up just right already. $350 as a one-off job, or $200. This is per door panel added onto a larger job. Replacing the French doors, including the frame, that's going to be over $1,000. That's another job that I really don't want to do, that I'd prefer not to take, and that I'm going to try to get my property managers to just send to a door and window guy. Replacing the weather stripping on those is going to be a trip fee plus. And I say plus because, like I told you, sometimes that weather stripping and those bottom seals can get a little complicated when you've got a French style door, but that's going to be a trip fee plus. Or if I'm already on the job, that's going to be a minimum of $100 plus. And then for replacing doorknobs and or deadbolts and rekeying on a French door and getting everything to line up and match just right, that'll be $35 for each of those. Performing adjustments to get everything to lock and latch is going to be a trip fee or $50. Replacing the bottom sweep and or seals is going to be $95 or a trip fee for a one-off. Replacing the threshold, I have not done before. I'm sure it's a little bit harder and more difficult and more complex than a single entry door. So I've just got this down as variable. I'll let y'all decide what to charge whenever you get on that job to do it. I would imagine it's not going to be too bad, but again, I don't want to pretend to know anything in the world about jobs that I actually haven't done myself. And then replacing a sliding bolt or latch, or replacing a chain lock, both of those are going to fall under a trip fee and or simply $45 if they're added to an existing job. And finally, installing an alarm to alert us whether that door's been opened or not is going to be a trip fee or $45. Now for additional considerations, I'm going to go over some stuff I've already said, and one of those is pricing varies wildly. This is my pricing for my business, for my clients, for my region, for my everything. It's unique to my company. It's unique to my skill sets. It's unique to everything about my business. So don't just copy my pricing, but hopefully my pricing gives you an idea where you might be starting out at. Number two, my pricing does change over time. It is not static, guys. I'm gonna look at a lot of these when I do these jobs next and I actually go perform this work and I come home to invoice. I'm gonna be going to invoice and I'm gonna look at the pricing I put on there and I'm just gonna go, what were you thinking? No, 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 drop that price or bump that price up. Pricing is an art, it's not a science unless you're working for insurance companies or something like that, but otherwise pricing is an art and it's going to be dynamic and it's something you're going to need to observe and make adjustments on over time. And just a reminder, I bumped my trip fee here in Tucson up to $150, and I'm trying to make sure as a minimum for my own internal numbers that as a minimum, when I'm all said and done, that I've made at least $120 per hour for the hours put in on the job. And then finally, guys, is the additional resources that I offer. So the first additional resource is this spreadsheet right here. You're going to find this by going to the bottom of the description of this video or any of my videos. At the very bottom is always going to be my link for my documents that you can download. They're all free to download. This is going to be called either Jobs List or Jobs List with Pricing. I wasn't going to do the pricing on the list because I get so many questions, so I'm just going to reiterate. These numbers change. These numbers are only mine. Don't just use my numbers. This is just a starting place for you. But you can download this spreadsheet from my documents. Another thing you can download is my custom line items. And that's where I've taken a lot of the things on this spreadsheet and I've made a line item that gives a description of the work to be done and a price for it. And I've generally got a line item for the labor and a separate line item for the materials. And the reason I do this is when I write estimates, I can go into Jobber. Jobber's the software that I've been running my business with literally since I started. Would not have succeeded without them. I do have a link in the description that I would love for you guys to click and go get a free 14-day trial, but I have my line items in Jobber. And what I've done is I've downloaded those line items into a document that you can download from me. And once you have them, if you have Jobber, you can go upload my custom line items into your Jobber account, and you can then operate with my line items. Now, again, I don't suggest that you use them as is. Don't use my exact pricing, don't use my exact descriptions, but use them as a nice starting place to get yours going, because what you're going to find is when you need to write an estimate or do an invoice for like 13 different line items that you did at a job, instead of having to hand type all of those out, it's going to take you like an hour to do that. Instead, you can open up your line items, you can go in there and you can just say literally like POP. I type in POP and what's going to pop up is pop-up sink stoppers in a bathroom. It's just going to auto filter right up to the top and I can just click on that, click on quantity and say what the quantity was. It's going to auto sum everything for me and I'm going to move on to the next line item. So if it's door stoppers, I'm going to type STOP and then door stoppers is going to filter up to the top. I'm going to click on door stoppers, add a quantity. It's going to do all the totaling up for me. Those are how you use my line items. You can download them from the same place. Go to the description of this video or any video, scroll all the way to the bottom, and that's where you click to get my free business documents. Now, something else I have is I do free webinars generally every weekend or at least every other weekend. It's usually going to be on a Saturday at around 4 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. I don't know what time zone you're in, but you can come into those and I will show you how I do my workflow on the admin side from receiving a job all the way through invoicing and closing out a job. And you can also use that time to pick my brain about how I do my pricing. And I also do tons of live streams, and I mean tons, guys. Come into my live streams and pick my brain. That's the place for that. That's where I just make myself available to you guys completely. And also you can email me personally, and I do try to reply to every single email. And the place you can email me at is bulletproofhandymanbusiness@gmail.com. bulletproofhandymanbusiness@gmail.com. Email me there and I'll do my best to reply as quick as I can. And then finally, we do campouts. In fact, the next one's in February and it's not even a campout, it's actually going to be inside a cabin instead of in a tent. But when we do these campouts, I get these sponsored by sponsors as often as I can. So the deal with these, when they're sponsored, is that you show up and everything's provided. You need to bring with you what you would basically bring to a hotel. I'm going to provide, if we're camping, I'm going to provide the tents, the sleeping bags, the air mattresses, the food. I'm going to set all the gear up. I'm going to tear all the gear down at the end. I'm going to cook all the food. I'm going to do all the cleaning. I'm going to host you for a weekend. And during that weekend, you can pick my brain all you want. So if you'd like to sign up for any of those, you can go to the description of this video or any of my videos and you will find the links to go pick a weekend and sign up for one of my campouts. And by the way, guys, I get these sponsored and paid for so that I can host you, so that I can spend this one-on-one time with those of you who really would like some one-on-one time to figure out your business. So if you would like for the sponsors to continue sponsoring these and to encourage them to sponsor more and more of them in the future, and simply to say thank you, the way that you can do that is you can go to the description of this video or any of my videos, and I don't ever want you spending any money on anything that you don't need. But if you find something in the description, if one of my links is for a product or a service that you need for running your business, please click on my links and use my links to get yourself there, to get your estimates, or to purchase those products. That's going to be how to show the sponsors that what I'm providing to you is valuable enough for you to reward the sponsors for continuing to sponsor. That's how we keep this entire project alive. So if you guys have any questions, I've told you how to get in touch with me, especially email me at bulletproofhandymanbusiness@gmail.com. Otherwise, go download these documents. I love you guys. I hope you're out there killing it, and I'll see you on the next one.